Hey, welcome to episode 4 of the TTSG podcast. I'm Lee, and in this video I'll be interviewing Kenneth from Alrethians Crafts and Battles. Over the past 3 years, Kenneth and I have been messaging each other through the comment sections on both of our channels, and we've even done a collab in the past where we took some household electrical items and made some cool terrain for it. And Kenneth specialises in budget terrain using items from around the home, including lots of cardboard, and he specialises in games like Necromunda. I don't remember seeing a podcast where two people get together and talk about junk modelling, so I thought we should do it. So in this video, we'll be doing that. We'll be talking about exactly how you can get started. Kenneth's going to share some of his awesome tips and experience from many years of crafting. We had to use the Skype audio recording in the end. We had a few issues with our microphones, but there's some great information in here and the audio is still clear. And I hope you'll get some great tips from Kenneth here that you can implement into your hobby. This is episode 4 of the TTSG podcast, and I've got a few episodes coming after this one where it's just me talking about how to write tabletop skirmish games. So I'm trying something a little bit different for the next few podcasts, and I'll be putting them all out within 1 week, about 10 episodes. So look out for those coming very soon. But for now, let's jump straight into the conversation and catch up with Kenneth from Alrethians Crafts and Battles. It'd be great if you could just tell us a little bit about how you got into tabletop gaming and in particular into terrain crafting.
Well, the tabletop gaming really started at a young age with when we bought the box of Hero Quest, the original one, when it was released. I was a kid back then and we enjoyed it a lot. Then started playing D&D afterwards, especially me and my dad. And later it went on to terrain building for many years later with Lord of the Rings, the first edition, because we were huge fans of the fantasy. And then the game was released and I immediately bought it. And then I saw all those cool images of the terrains and I was like, I really want to start doing that. So that's basically how it all got started.
Oh, that's cool. So what was the very first thing that you made?
The very first thing that I made was a hill. And it was with our DM from our D&D group, and he already did a few terrain crafts, and I was like, that's cool, man. And he said, you want to learn? I said, yeah. And then we started by making a hill, those XPS foam carving, flocking. I still have that one, by the way.
That's cool. So do you still play with it?
Actually, I do use it sometimes. It's still on my shelf, and sometimes I whip it out and put it on the table. So it has seen some wear and tear over the years. So.
And so, how long ago was that again? Do you say when you made your first piece?
That would be early 2000. I think 2001. I think 2002 when the game was released. It was with the release of the first movie of Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. So basically, I think a couple of months after that when the game was released.
So I guess you got loads of terrain then all around your house. Does it take it over?
Yeah. But I really got rid of a lot of stuff as well during the years because, sometimes you make a project and you think, this is cool. And then you see someone else maybe, I can probably top the one that I did before. So let's try. And you make something that's better and you get rid of the other one. Some things you keep, sometimes you just improve on the ones that you've built before.
And do you find it hard to get rid of something you have made?
Sometimes I do, sometimes. But eventually you have to think of, this thing is getting too much, too cluttered, so I gotta get rid of this because
it's got to be a point to get to. It's just too many. So when you're working on a project, how do you decide on the theme or setting, and what are some of your favorite themes to work on now?
Well, that usually depends in what I'm in the mood for. Usually it's like, do I need something for this game, this particular campaign or something for especially D&D? I need this set of terrain, or I'm going to do a battle report, or I'm going to play some games. And that's usually something that I make to match the setting depending on the mood that I'm in.
So what made you really focus on the budget terrain? Because that's what you do a lot on your YouTube channel, right? It's more like the budget stuff, like making things out of things you got lying around the house or maybe craft items. So what made you focus on that?
Well, I saw it was actually an inspiration that I got from DM Scotty of the DM's Craft way back then, and I saw him making all kinds of terrain for his D&D groups, and I was like, yeah, man, that's actually a pretty good idea because yeah, you can buy foam board and XPS and all the expensive stuff in the Games Workshop or the Army, flocking or whatever, the Woodland Scenics. But I was like, if you can do it for cheap, why spend all your money on something that's basically there to fill up a table? You can make cool stuff with it, but let's see how I can make that. And DM's Craft was one of the huge inspirations for that. Also, Wilock's Armory, he also did a lot of things from cardboard and his Wilock board, as he calls it.
Yeah, there's some great channels. Yeah, I like those. And you focus a lot on Necromunda, right? I really like watching your Necromunda videos.
Yeah, exactly. I love the setting, the aesthetic, the team, the gangs, how everything is so decrepit and with the gang wars and everything. I really love that thematic theme and how dark and grimy it is. I really like the mood of that.
It kind of seems perfect for you doing like the kind of crafting. Your crafting style just matches that setting really well, I think.
Thanks. Yeah, I really enjoy that. And I think that also comes out in my builds as well because I do tend to spend more time on my Necromunda builds. Well, not more time, but to get it more looking decrepit, actually.
What are some essential tools or materials that you'd recommend for beginners to get started with?
For beginners, I would definitely say cardboard. Cardboard is the way to go. Get yourself some cardboard, a glue gun, PVA glue, cardstock from pizza boxes, cereal boxes. Foam board is awesome as well, but that's then already a little bit more to the expensive side, depending on your budget, of course. But you have ready board, I think, in the States, and that's pretty cheap, but we don't have that here in Belgium, so that's unfortunate. And yeah, lollipop sticks and coffee stirrers, those things that you can do tons of things with those things, and they're really great and cheap.
Yeah, and you could just grab a few every time you buy a coffee, right? Just get a handful.
Exactly. Just take a bunch of them with you.
So have you got like a go-to household item that you always seem to try and incorporate into different models, or what's your favorite like material?
Paper drinking straws. For anything Necromunda or sci-fi related, I always turn to paper drinking straws. They're amazing.
That's cool. So you're using like pipes and all sorts. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Pipes, gutters that run next to a street as well. If you cut them in half and you glue them like a U shape, and you glue them and you set tiles next to it, you create actually a nice, cool-looking gutter. I did that on my combat patrol board, and it looks fantastic.
Nice. Yeah, I'll put a link to that video in the description because that's awesome how that turned out. That looks brilliant, man. And we should tell everyone we've been watching each other's channel for years, haven't we? And like just messaging each other.
From when you started doing your channel, and I got there watching your Warcry videos, I was like, oh man, this is awesome.
Yeah, it's good, and we're finally meeting online, so it's great. Yeah, it's been great to actually meet and kind of not in person, but actually see each other for real. It's good.
Exactly, it's the next best thing.
Nice. So you've got the materials, but have you got any like favorite techniques as well, or little tricks for achieving like a realistic or thematic look in the terrain projects?
For realism, you can go very realistic with cardboard, but the trick to that is layering. That's what I do, because you can make a simple cardboard building, cut up some walls, glue them together, and you got a building. But if you want to add details, go with layering. So let's say you make a window, you make another exactly the same wall, but you make a window the same size but a little bit smaller and glue that in the back, and you get already some depth definition. And if you add several layers to that, then you can create some nice, cool looking things with very easy techniques.
Nice. Have you got like a particular video that you can recommend people to watch for that, to see that technique?
Yeah, my ruined 40k Leviathan buildings. It's not the latest one that I did, but the one previous to that, the one that came after my combat patrol board. I made 3D elements in my ruins in that building back there, so I layered them up in that one.
Awesome. We'll have to put a link for that too. Definitely. Nice one. So let's talk a little bit about gameplay now and how we can use terrain in our games. And have you got any tips for gamers who want to make their tabletop gaming sessions more immersive through custom terrain?
Ah, yeah, custom terrain is that's always a nice thing to have on the table. I mean, it gets you involved in the setting, into what you're playing. You can put books down and everything, of course, and we actually did that as well on D&D sessions previously, where we set a cup and that would represent this and that. But the more you start to get creative and crafting and you look at other things, yeah, you start to replicate those. But my advice is to start out simple. Start out simple and work yourself up from that. Using terrain in any type of game, it really immerses you into whatever it is that you're playing, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be perfect, right? I think.
Oh, definitely not. No, my work is far from perfect. I've seen other YouTube channels of guys who build terrain like it's a diorama from a movie set. I'm like, oh man, that's impressive. I ain't gonna do that, but that's very cool that you can do this. But
Yeah.
stick to cardboard.
I remember like when me and my son first started playing the games together, we used things like just tinned food from the cupboard, boxes of biscuits, and we had such a great time with that. And so for us, we could like bring that to life just with our imagination. Right?
Sure thing. Theater of the mind, man. That's one of the greatest things you have. And once you're having fun, you start to ignore if it's a tin can or if it's a book. You don't see it. You see the thing that you're playing, and as long as you're having fun, that's the most important thing of all.
Definitely, definitely. So with some games, especially with like 40k and things, I've found with doing the tournament terrain, I've got to find a balance between functionality and then aesthetics. You want it to look good, but it's also got to work within the rules. So how do you balance that when you're designing terrain?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. For that, I used some rubble things that I've made previously. Still working on that, but I try to find a balance. So I test out a few things. So I make one piece and see if it's possible to set some minis on there, because miniatures are always handy when building terrain. But so I set the miniatures on there, see would it work, would it not work, and if it doesn't work, yeah, I toss that away and start over until I finally get to the point and I say, yeah, I'm happy with this.
And so what about scale and proportion? How do you approach that when you're creating the terrain pieces? Is it the same thing? You use the model, or do you do different things for different game systems?
No, because usually the games that I play all are basically in the same scale, because you have those games that take 40 millimeter characters, but yeah, basically if you take like a Space Marine or Stormcast, they're pretty much similar in size as well. So basically I just use a miniature, and to depends for everyone what type of game that they play, but I would advise take one of the figures that you have for that game and find a realistic way how you can implement that into your games.
Do you ever use like a piece of terrain you've already built and then use that as like a kind of guide?
Sometimes, but that only usually do that for when I have to build a lot of, like, let's say I'm building medieval houses, and then I will use the one that I made as a guide, and the rest follows along with that. But usually I don't make the same things over and over again, so I just work with what I have and then go from there.
Cool. I guess having it all slightly different just makes it look almost more natural, especially medieval and things like Necromunda.
Yeah, definitely. Necromunda is very cool. I mean, the thing that I love about Necromunda, it's so forgiving. I mean, let's say you build something and you think, oh man, that actually doesn't look too well, or that doesn't fit. But then you add a few things on it, set it with the rest of the terrain, and all of a sudden it works. Necromunda is very forgiving.
Would you recommend that's a good place to start? Do you think if people are into especially sci-fi games, and one has never crafted before?
Yeah, definitely. If you're into sci-fi games and you never crafted before, go with Necromunda. You can never go wrong with that. I mean, stick some walls together, glue some pipes on that, some more details, paint it up all grimy, rusty, and you're good to go.
Like thinking a bit more like wide scale, but everything, all the different game systems. What do you think makes a good piece of terrain?
Good question. I would say what makes a good piece of terrain is when you sit it on the table and you look at it and you're like, yeah, that's the thing I'm going for. That's the setting. This is what I had in mind, yeah, that makes a good piece of terrain. But of course, that all depends. It's in the eye of the beholder, of course. I mean, if somebody looks at something and they're proud of what they made, or then yeah, it always works, of course. I think it's different for everyone, that one.
And what do you think about getting like kids involved in building and terrain? Is that something you do with your family?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I love doing that. There's just depending on their age, I would say do the cutting for them. If they're still at a young age, don't give them sharp knives or very hot glue guns. I mean, safety first, of course. But yeah, I mean, it's sometimes nice to say, well, you want to make something? Okay, how would you envision that? And give them a piece of paper, let them draw it out, and work from what they made, and try to replicate what they have in their heads, and let them work on that as well. Do that together, and yeah, let them pick some details to add on there and make it like it's their piece.
Yeah, nice. And then that gets them like ownership of the game, doesn't it, as well? And then they really want to like learn it and play it. So what do you find that the kids like doing the most out of all the different areas of crafting?
Well, for my son, for instance, he likes. Well, he enjoys making buildings for his stop motion films, his Godzilla buildings, and so it's pretty easy to do. And we've made a bunch of that. And sometimes he asks, like, yeah, like for instance, what I'm planning is the Blood Bowl pitch. So he's, yeah, let's make something like that, and we're gonna make it on concrete. So when they fall, they hit harder, stuff like that.
Have you made like a full stadium for Blood Bowl?
Not yet, but I'm working on one.
You're going to be doing that? No, that's cool.
Yeah.
So will that be a series on your channel?
Yeah, it's going to be a full video on how I make my Blood Bowl stadium.
Oh, that's going to be awesome. Yeah, I look forward to that one. That'd be great. So what do you think's like the overall appeal of budget custom terrain? And why do you think people are drawn to it? I mean, it's great fun doing it with the kids, but a bit more. Or for you, what's the appeal to you?
It's easy to get a hold of. Everyone has cardboard or knows somewhere that you can find cardboard. Like for instance, how stupid it can be. I mean, for the combat patrol board, I went dumpster diving into my local recycle park. I said, "Do you guys have a lot of cardboard here laying about that I can take?" They said, "Yeah, of course." And I said, "Yeah, big boxes like from TVs or refrigerators. That stuff was awesome, and you can make a full onslaught board with that, and it's for free. You only have to transport it from there to your house, of course." But yeah,
For your like combat patrol boards, or especially because you've done the like Into the Dark style Space Hulk as well, haven't you?
yeah.
How much would you say like that cost you to do like a kill team size board?
If you would build a board of Kill Team and you would use cardboard, then it would just cost you the paints and the glue, because cardboard is free. So just your imagining. But it all depends. If you're a true beginner, you might have to spend a couple of euros or pounds or dollars to get the basic materials like glue, the glue gun, a ruler, stuff like that. But if you exclude all that, then basically most materials are free. And because other crafters that I know, they have huge boxes filled. I myself as well, I have a ton of stuff that's still laying about that I can take along and say, let's build something around this. I actually got rid of a whole bunch not so long ago, because I was like, this is getting ridiculous and too much.
So have you got boxes full of like junk and stuff?
Yeah, mate. Yeah.
And is your wife down with that? Is she happy?
It's outside in the garage. So, but yeah, she was like, "You still know what you have?" I'm like, "No."
Yeah, I found that I would just collect stuff over time and just have loads of it lying around, and then eventually just have to ditch it because it gets out of control.
Yeah, definitely. But my wife is awesome with that. She's like, yeah, she's very supportive of what I do. She always like, "Yeah, man, you have fun, go nuts." So,
And does she get involved? Does she ever make anything as well?
no, making up, but painting, yeah, she loves a Sylvanet, and she has a couple of. Well, she can make a good, decent army with Sylvanet, and she did some painting with them as well. Yeah.
That's cool. I've always like struggled with trees. Have you got any tips for making trees?
Oh, usually for trees, I never really bothered. I did make a few, but I found it more of a hassle to make the trees, and it takes up a lot of work to make good looking trees. While actually, when you go from woodland scenics, you have those plastic ones that you can, I don't know if you know them, probably you do, the ones you can bend in shape and then cover them with glue and stick some flocking on that, and you're good to go. You have trees.
Yeah, I know the ones you mean. Yeah, that's probably a good way, because there's a lot with like twisting wire and things, but it's very difficult to make it look nice, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And you can, I mean, if you go for it and you take your time and twist each branch and then start by pasting that with modeling paste and stuff like that, you can make amazing looking stuff that looks ultra realistic. But the time that goes into making one of those trees, by that time, I already went to the shop, bought like a pack of 20 or 10, a couple, came home, painted them, dry brushed them gray, twisted them, glued them to, and put all the foliage on top. And then I have 20 trees while I'm still working on one if I
Yeah.
use the wire. So yeah, I don't really bother with making trees, though they are very cool. And my hats off to those who take the time to make those, really.
Have you ever played or made anything for the Star Wars game, Star Wars Legion? Have you ever done that?
Actually,
Yeah.
one time, yeah, I've made a building because a couple of people contact me and you're planning to do Star Wars terrain and you also love Star Wars. I'm like, yeah, I grew up on Star Wars. I mean, of course, I love it, and I've played the game as well. And I've made one piece, also one of my earlier videos, and that's basically just the Tatooine building that I've made, and that's actually also with cardboard and a styrofoam ball that I cut in half, and nothing else. Cardboard, glue, a little bit of spackle on it, and yeah, good to go.
So you got like the dome shape,
Yeah,
and then built like the kind of porch almost coming off it. Is it?
yeah, exactly.
And so what do you put on for texture? Spackle.
Yeah, yeah, or I don't know. Yeah, spackle. I think you call it in the US, or I call it drywall compound in English.
Right. And so when you use that stuff, do you colour it first, or do you just put it on, like mix it with water? I guess do you? The powder,
Yeah,
the water, put it on.
yeah. I mix it with water and then I basically stipple it on. I don't cover it. I take a beat up brush and start by stippling the entire thing, give it time to dry, and then I simply paint it.
So I always thought it'd be cool to make like an Endor village. That's why I was asking about Star Wars and trees. You know the Ewoks, the Ewok village.
Ah, yeah, yeah, that would be cool. That would be cool with the huge trees. I think I've seen a couple of videos on a couple of guys who I think Terrain Made Easy made a video about that a couple of years ago actually. But I think he did a lot of Star Wars terrain, and indoor trees was one of them. Those big trees. Also, Sorastro's painting. I don't know if you know of his channel,
What's it
but
called?
yeah, he does not do a lot of terrain. It's a great channel for if you're learning to paint and stuff like that. He does fantastic work. And he has a few videos, I think 3 or something, and they're about terrain. And he also has one with those special Star Wars trees, and that's pretty cool too.
So let's talk a bit more about your projects now. So
Right?
if you had to pick some of your favourite budget-friendly projects you've created, which ones? Let's say three, your top three, and why do they stand out to you?
I think for number one would definitely be my combat patrol board because it did take up a lot of time, but I just simply love the end result of that and how I created something basically for free because I had all the materials. It only took me cardboard and yeah, and coffee lids. That entire board was for free. It didn't cost me anything. I would say that would be my number one, definitely. And as for number two, I think my medieval buildings. There's also one that I'm working on. Couple of them actually, and yeah, they're on my cupboard. I can send you. I think I send you a couple of pics of those. The last ones were not the finished ones, but those are yeah. I really love them as well. And my D&D tiles from long ago. I made them out of those square fitness mats and glued basically a fake grass mat on top of that, a very cheap one. It's actually more of a carpet. And I painted up that carpet to make it look like grass. And those tiles, for all those years, still stand out and we still use them.
That's awesome. So they last a long time. This kind of things you make, don't they?
Yeah, they do. They're built to last.
We've talked about Blood Bowl and that kind of project, but have you got any other upcoming projects or collaborations that you're working on that you'd like to tell us about?
Yeah, I do actually have another collaboration with a bunch of channels in November. And Jesse from Little Giant Crafts. He organized it. We also did one previously, the Super Sci-Fi Slam, and that was with super glue caps and stuff like that. But now we're doing a zoo, a fantasy zoo. So it's just basically taking a bunch of plastic animals, you know, the cheap ones. You can buy in a sack in a plastic bag, and create a creature from that, and then create an environment. So we all each Wylock is also involved in that project, so that's pretty cool. And a bunch of other cool people with good channels. So we're all going to do a different creature, and I'm actually going to build a chimera.
Ah, nice. Are you going to
And
do any more like zombie style, zombie terrain?
yeah, I'm actually that's one of the other projects that I still haven't, because I'm still working on my own game, but it has taken a huge back burner onto other stuff. But yeah, I'm planning to make a board that is actually matched with The Last of Us. So basically, that style with the overgrown buildings and the ruined streets and the flooded streets and everything, the rusted cars. And I'm actually planning on building a big board to represent that as well, because I really love zombie games. It's one of the my favorite. Also for my wife, she loves playing The Walking Dead. My kids as well. My daughter, yeah, Walking Dead is one of the favorite, most favorite games to play as a family.
So how are you going to do like the flooded streets and things? What are you going to use for that? Is there a way to do that on a budget? Or...
Yeah, I'm still working that out, but I think I'm going to be using XPS foam on that, because I don't think cardboard is going to be strong enough to do that. But I think I'm going to build up the board in a bunch of layers, carve out pieces, and then fill it with resin.
I've not used resin before for anything like that. Is it pretty easy? Because sometimes you think these things are really difficult, but when you come to try them, they're actually not that difficult.
No,
What
indeed.
advice would you give people to use resin?
I've only used it a bunch of times, not all that many. I've used it on my Mordheim Warcry board. I've used resin on that, and that was a pain in the beginning actually, because I didn't know how to seal it properly, and I got leakage. Yeah, a bunch of bloopers on that as well. And then also I wanted to make an incubator. It was also for a project, and a Tyranid incubator, and I wanted to fill it up with resin, which I did, and drop the Tyranid in there, and put some LEDs in there, which actually worked. But then I noticed that the plastic container was not built for resin. So it started to melt the plastic, and I got a huge spill of the resin. So resin is not one of my favorites to work with, but you can get good results with working with it. But yeah, you have to read the instructions very carefully.
Right, so you've got to do it by the book.
Oh yeah, definitely. But yeah, Mordheim, I'm still planning on making a board for Mordheim as well, because I love the setting of Mordheim. I love the gritty fantasy ruined medieval village, like the village of Bree in Lord of the Rings, but then the ruined one. I really like the aesthetic of Mordheim. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And so, have you got? Well, how big is the board you've got for it now?
It's bigger than a Warcry board, but not all that, because I built it for Warcry to play games on that. It is a little bigger, but it works.
So, can you incorporate much height into Mordheim?
Yeah. I've built up many layers, so you can go down into the board, you can go up ladders. All the buildings are connected as well through some way or another. You can attach, of course, walkways on top, but everything is reachable. You can get on top of the buildings, you can get to the other building. There is a bridge running over a canal where I actually glued in a toy alligator.
If people were starting out, then what advice would you give them to get started? So, if they're either intimidated by the whole process or they don't know where to begin, what would you say to them?
Are that simple. I mean, don't be intimidated by things you see online, because then it can get out of hand real quickly. If you mirror to what you see on images and you think, oh man, I'm never ever going to reach that. Yeah, you can, but start with the basics. Take, let's say, 4 rectangles, glue them together, and glue a square on top of that, and you got yourself a tower or a building. Next time you do the same thing, but you cut a door into the square. Now you have a door on that building, and go from there, cut in some windows, and before you know it, you're starting to attach things to the roof, gluing pipes on it, and yeah, you're set. simple, and never be intimidated or never. Well, you can be inspired, definitely, because I'm inspired all the time. But you can be inspired by other, but don't try to mimic what they do on the first go. Work your way up to that. Anything is reachable.
And I guess it doesn't matter if they make any mistakes, because sometimes you can get some cool things out of those mistakes, right?
Definitely, definitely. And you learn with every build. I mean, with everything I do, I learn something new. I'm like, oh, damn, this worked out really cool. I'm going to try that again next time. And next time I do that, and then I expand on that and expand on that. And yeah, before you know it, yeah, you're building terrain.
I really like that when you use that crochet grid, the mesh. That's awesome. That is really good.
I've seen it on another channel once before, and I was like, yeah, I still have a bunch of that drywall mesh tape hanging, laying about the house from when we did our renovations here. So I started by gluing it on a piece of card, then gluing strips on top of that, and I was like, damn, this really looks nice, man. And now I use it in every sci-fi build that I make because it's really awesome.
If you've got like a battle report coming up, that you'll be thinking about the terrain and how you can incorporate that into the story.
Definitely, because the battle reports for me, because I do make a lot of mistakes playing the games, but that's just me playing against myself. So yeah, you forget or you overlook certain rules. For me, the story is what counts, and I'm like, yeah, that setting, I want to look like that or like this. And especially with my Necromunda terrain, you can make so many things and make it feel it really immersive, and that's what I really love, and that's how I really actually started building the terrain for the channel, and that's starting with Necromunda. I really love the setting, the entire aesthetic about it, the looks, everything. It's amazing.
I'm sure I've seen on some of these you do little posters on them as well. Do you do that where you get the posters and cut them out and put them on?
Exactly. I usually print out a bunch of images, and once they're done, I thin out some skeleton horde and paint that all over them. Sometimes put some tears in it and just stick that onto the wall.
Did you just crumple the paper up a bit as well? Do you do that?
Yeah. It's glued on and it's sturdy. I start by scraping off a few pieces that it looks like it's been torn off or stuff like that to make it look realistic.
Where can people find like little posters like that?
Google Images. Just type in, it doesn't matter, Necromunda posters, wanted posters, whatever you have in your head, like let's say 40K images or stuff like that. Whatever you want, you can find it online. Or wanted posters, fantasy, stuff like that. Eventually, you start to get creative by typing in things, and you always find something that you like.
Have you got any like specific? You've mentioned a few channels, but is there any specific other communities or resources that you could recommend for gamers interested in learning more about terrain crafting to take a look at? Obviously, your channel.
Check out the DM's Craft, Wylock's Armory, Jeremy's Black Magic Craft. You know, those are all the three legends in the business. I mean, I've watched them. I still watch them constantly. I mean, check out your terrain videos as well, mate, because the things you did and like the orc that you made, I don't know what the name was called, but it was fantastic. I love that. So, but yeah, there are so many good channels of building terrain, and there are, if people going more professional, I mean, yeah, a lot of people use those hot wire cutters, those Proxon hot wire cutter. I don't have one. I should get one because it would really make things a lot easier. But yeah, you can make awesome stuff with that as well. But as I said, those are more leaning into the range of getting a bit more expensive because you have to buy the Proxon, and I don't think it's all that cheap. Not making anyone's budget, of course.
Quite
but
expensive, those precise ones, can't they? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And that's awesome tools to have at hand for building terrain, of course. But then we're leaning more into the diorama looking terrain, which is, of course, fantastic. But I stick to things that's achievable and attainable for everyone. The things that I make, anyone can make that. Just a little bit of imagination and, yeah, practice, actually. Just keep improving on yourself and evolve.
I bought one of those handheld cheap wire cutters, but then it turned out it didn't work on the insulation foam I had. So I ended up just using my knife anyway. I think I got a better result just from a knife.
Yeah, Definitely, because those cheap wire cutters, they're good for, let's say you want to make drill a hole or something into the styrofoam, the XPS, and you can burn a hole through it, but you can easily use a wood burner for that as well. But I find that cutting, if you want straight edges, you are better off using a simple box cutter and just go slow, and you get nice clean cuts. But with that hot wire, and you use it, my hand is never that steady as my knife that's against my ruler. So I would say use a knife. It's often better, and you can always sand those things into shape. Not many people apparently knew about that, but well, people that I've talked to, I said, yeah, you can. Yeah, but it's straight. I said, yeah, but you can sand it. Huh? You can easily sand XPS foam. Do wear a mask when you do that, of course, because breathing in those dust things from it's never good. Do that outside and put on a mask. You can easily sand XPS foam.
Nice. Yeah, I haven't tried that yet. Yeah, I'm gonna have to give that a go.
Really
We haven't
easy.
talked about paints much either, really. What about like budget paints? Because I think sometimes people think you need to use like say Citadel paints or Vallejo.
For terrain, I hardly use them. I do sometimes use the metallic ones for small details or getting the gold, because they do have a better coverage than the very cheap metallic craft paints that we have here in Belgium. But let's say for Necromunda, I use the cheapest of cheap paints that I can find, stipple that on, we'll go from there.
So is
And
that just acrylic or poster paint or what?
acrylic, I do use acrylic. You can still wash off the poster paint.
Cool. So do you have like specific recipes then you would use for like certainly Necromunda to do like the base to keep it all like looking not the same, but you're keeping it in the same kind of colors so it all looks like it belongs in the same environment?
Yeah, for that I have a simple method that I always use, which means I simply prime everything in black, and then I start by overbrushing or heavy stippling it with burnt umber brown, and then let that all dry. And when that is dry, I start by stippling cheap silver paint on it, but very lightly, and then I use the color that I want and start by because painting Necromunda, I never paint. I always stipple. Always, I always stipple everything to have it get that really nasty looking feeling. And when everything is dry, then I start by stippling brown again on top of those metallic paints and going over to orange and a lighter orange to create a rust effect. And then what I often do is you have those very cheap pastels. You can easily, if you wet the terrain piece, you can scrape that off and get a nice looking texture on it as well to create a grimy rust effect. Really cheap, and it works fantastic.
Nice. Have you got a video that goes through that technique? A specific one you think would be good for people to see?
I do that on most of my terrain builds, but I especially use the pastel in my Necromunda tiles. There I use the pastel on those tiles in the end. But I do that on the walls as well. If people watch my Necromunda project, it's one of my earlier videos. There I go over all those techniques that I use.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'll put links to all of this down below. Yeah, so people can find all the different videos we've talked about. And if anyone's watching this on YouTube, they'll see loads of pictures coming up as well that you kindly sent across. So yeah, it's really awesome to see all those pictures. That's really cool, man. All the information you've given us, hopefully some great tips to get people started. So let's wrap up. And if you'd like to share anything, tell everyone what you've got going on and where's the best place people can find you and connect with you.
Well, the things that I got going on at the moment is working on the Blood Bowl Stadium, working on that. And for future projects, I am going to replicate the board that I've made for more time, going to expand on that and try to do it even better. And smaller terrain crafts for 40k, of course. More Necromunda is also coming. I'm going to do a few things for the Ash Waste as well in the future. And yeah, people want to connect with me. That's simply go through YouTube. I mean, my link to my Facebook group is there as well, so they can click on that. And everyone can, if they want, they can always send me a message through Messenger. So yeah, you can find me there.
It's been really fun talking with you and just hearing about the process and the tips you've got to share, everybody. So thanks so much for that. And also, great to finally meet up and have a chat in real life rather than just messaging each other, because it's been good getting to know each other over the years.
Thanks for the opportunity, man. It was really nice chatting with you.
Thank you so much for listening to the TTSG podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback, so add your comments down below or drop me an email to Lee, that's Lee, at tabletopskirmishgames.com. Let's end the podcast with an appropriate quote from Henry David Thoreau. "It's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see." I think this quote perfectly sums up the spirit of junk modelling, and for what can just be a few tin cans, some crumpled up card, but when it's put together with a little bit of paint splashed on, you can create some awesome scenery that you can have fun with your friends and family, and that's what tabletop skirmish gaming is all about after all. Thanks again for listening to episode 4 of the TTSG podcast. I hope you'll come and join me for those solo casts, so we'll see how that goes, 10 episodes, and that should be pretty fun. So look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the TTSG podcast.